All right, everyone, welcome to another fantastic episode of the Because Football podcast. This is your host, Coach Andrew, and I'm here with Ryan Roy Shah of Pune Pioneers FC in Pune, India. First of all, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew. It's fantastic being on your show because I've been following the Transform Soccer activities, the one-on-one work you're doing, as well as the guests you've had previously. So I think it's a privilege. It's an honor for me to also, be a part of your space.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate the kind words, and yeah, been following what you've been doing as well with the club, and we'll definitely get into some of those happenings and the new opportunities that the Pioneers are up to. But I think the first thing I'm wondering, and a lot of our audience is wondering too, is maybe not knowing too much about the youth game or just the soccer culture and structure in India in general. If you look across the world, India is more known for cricket than for football right now, and so I guess my first question is, how did you first get exposed to the game of football?
So, if you look in present day, I'll first look at present day and then move to how I started. So you have the Indian
Okay.
Super League, which is known all over the world. It's not followed all over the world, but it's known. You have some big CVs coming into on big money to play in the Indian League. So now there's a bit more of recognition of the local game. But the era in which I started following football was where every Indian football fan was a fan of the Premier League. So it
Hmm.
was English football. That's all it was. So just like everyone else at the age of 7, I mean, before that, I was a big cricket fan. And then at the age of 7, I watched my first game on television, which was Manchester United versus Birmingham City. And, the only names I knew at that point were David Beckham and a few more. So then it was,
Yeah.
okay, fine. Beckham is playing for Manchester United, so why not, just see what's happening here. And just moving forward, I then decided to try playing the game, and then I think the third or fourth time that I played the sport, I got addicted to it. So it
Hmm.
was definitely more exciting than cricket, in my view, because in cricket, I mean, cricket's also a beautiful game, but then your involvement in every moment is far lesser than what it would be in football. So I love the
Yeah.
physicality, I love the quick decision making you had to do, and the way you could express yourself, and the a lot of the off the field benefits of football is what excited me. And then moving forward, I started taking an interest in what Indian football is about. And then I, as a youth player, I got to know what the which clubs have youth teams. So it's similar to the UK having Cat 1 academies. So I mean,
Right.
nothing
Okay.
compared to Cat 1 academies in terms of infrastructure, but what I mean is like a youth team of a top professional team in the country. And then I gave a few trials here and there, got selected, and then I was fortunate to play for the youth teams of some highly reputed clubs in the country, highly reputed professional clubs in the country. And yes, that's been my journey. That's been my journey as a player.
To me, also watching Manchester United was very influential. Maybe a little after you started. For me, I definitely remember the Beckham days and Andy Cole and Dwight York and Scholes and the Nevilles. For me, it was like a little bit when Ronaldo kind of broke on the scene and Van Nistelrooy and those players. But it's interesting that we have very different backgrounds, but Manchester United was really influential for us. And so, as a player, as you started playing the game, what did those opportunities look like? Were you able to have access to youth clubs? Was it more just a lot of casual kickabouts with your friends? Like, what did that pathway and those opportunities look like for you as a player?
As a child, so I'm saying maybe at the age of 8 or 9, it was mainly
Right.
playing in school. So you had options. You had a PE class, a physical education class, in
Mm-hmm.
which you could decide whether to play cricket, football, basketball. You had 3 or 4 sports. Now you can assume, being in India, everyone ran to the cricket section. There were a few, not too many. So you would have 5-a-side games and 6-a-side games because you didn't have too many players who wanted to play football. So that
Sure.
was my first, I would say, semi-formal introduction to the sport, where you have, and the coach wasn't really like an FA licensed coach. He was more of a all-round physical education teacher. Uh, thereafter, I think, I played for my school. I played for my school football team. But thereafter, I think I was fortunate, perhaps a bit of work from my end as well, where I did a bit of research to understand what's the next step now. Great.
Hmm.
Like every other kid, I want to be a professional footballer at the age of 12 or 13. But then how do we go about it? What does it
Yeah.
look like? And then, I did Google searches. Now, fortunately, at that time, now it's changed, but at that time, because Indian football wasn't really big, I mean, it isn't big compared to cricket even today, but at that time, it was really, really easy. So, a Google search got me the contact number of the assistant manager of the first team. So then,
Great. Great.
I just made a phone call and then said, and this isn't this is like the first team of the national league, so like the equivalent of
Hmm.
the Premier League, So
Okay.
then he told me that, okay, you come at this time to this venue, give your trial. Didn't get selected into the in the at the first trial. Got selected in the second club I gave a trial at, which was equal standards. So yeah, I guess. At that time, because we are looking long back, this is
Yeah.
15 years ago, maybe. At that time, you had to do a lot of R&D, a lot of research on your own end
Hmm.
to understand what the opportunities are. But right now, if we talk about today, it's much easier now because the biggest tool is Instagram. So
Okay. Okay.
you'll have these Instagram pages. So like there's a page called Spot Ek. There's a page called Football Trials India. There are different
Hmm.
pages that circulate trial news of teams that are playing in the Indian Super League, the I League, which is below that, as well as grassroots teams. So now it's very easy for footballers to just get the information and then just go across and just visit the academy
Gotcha.
and so it's much more the awareness has become much more easier now.
Yeah. So it sounds like as a younger player, there were not really very clear and known pathways. But then once you did a little bit of time and research yourself, it was accessible at least, because it sounds like being a smaller knit community, and the fact that you could get the assistant manager's contact information,
Yeah.
shows that it had to be accessible. It's good to
Yes.
see now that it's kind of adjusted. You mentioned some of the the bigger names that have come. I think to mind, am I right? That did, I might get this wrong. Was Robbie Fowler one? Did he come through to the ISL? I know he did. I'm more familiar with Thailand. I know he played in Thailand as well, and parts of Australia. And I can't think of specific names, but I remember a few Spanish players coming over to the playing at the top level in India. So
Yeah.
obviously those big names help. But what do you think, if you could point at like one or two of the biggest changes that has helped to grow the game in India? What would you say one or two of those biggest people, moments, structural changes has been?
Right. So there have been many. I mean, I wouldn't say one or two, it'll be probably 10 or 15. So let's look at the grassroots part now. So there's a much more formal structure in place in a lot of the cities. Now, I can't generalize because India is so huge. So, I
Right.
mean, what's happening in, let's say, the west side may not be what's happening in the north. So, I mean, just as an
Right.
example, but at least I can tell you about the region that I'm in, first-hand information. So there's a bigger, much better structure. So there's federation, the All India Football Federation. They have got this. They have got this tournament called the Baby Leagues, which is on U8, U10, U12. So that's
Okay.
basically like small-sided games between academies. Now, similar to the county FAs in England, you have got the state
Okay.
associations, and below them you have your district associations. So district associations usually look after the football in the city. Now
Hmm.
district associations are coming up with different, I'd say, tournaments for under 8, under 10, and under 12. Now moving up from there, so you've got the U13, 15, and 18. Now, this is much more structured. So here you have to first, you have to fulfill certain criteria. For example, having access to an 11-a-side pitch, and, having
Okay.
a defibrillator. So then there's a list of
Okay,
stuff.
great.
Now that in itself is nice. It's challenging because after all, it's not easy to get a return on the sport in India, on football, but at least you've got passionate people who have started doing the right things. So now that means
Right.
there's a much better facility for footballers. Now, once you've qualified, once you've got your accreditation, then you're basically playing. You're recognized as, one of the most serious clubs and youth clubs and academies in the country, and the tournaments you get are much better. Now, coming to the women's game. So when I played, the women's game was really, really amateur. So, many clubs at decent standards, they could not really have a squad of 20. They couldn't assemble a squad of 20 female footballers. That has changed. It's not changed completely because, I mean, from where we are, so the club I'm with, last season we played with 9 girls against 11 girls in the league, and somehow we got the results. But it's not, that shows you that it's not very easy to get access to female footballers.
Yeah.
Now, coming to the men's game, uh, there are so the Indian Super League, when it started, it was only for, I think, 3 or 4 months. So it was more like a festival rather than a league. Now it's a
Okay.
long run league. It's structured. You have got the ISL, then you've got the I League, then you've got the I League second division. So then you've got 3 divisions now, which is again new, because again, back when I was playing, it was, you had the I League, and then you had the I League second division, which was again just a 1 month tournament, and that was it. So now there's more opportunity for players, and the salaries have increased. So the what players got paid maybe 8 years ago, top players got paid, is what a substitute would get paid today in the
Okay.
ISL. So
Okay.
that immediately motivates so many other footballers to say that there is a future, because a lot of parents still today,
Exactly.
and that's something that we face at our academy. Um, so, if there's someone who's talented, we'll tell their parents that, can you send them for training? Can you send them for more hours? Can we send them here for trials? Their question is that, sure, we'll do that, but what next? What's the scope? What's the career prospect like?
Right.
We don't have an answer. We don't have a strong enough answer for that right now, because there isn't one. But we are going the right path, because the ones now, again, talking about regions, there are, for example, the northeast of region of India, the Bengal region of India, the Kerala region of India. There's already a structure. There's a, I would say, following for football already, and
Yeah. So
that
from the
goes
cultural
to,
side, yeah, there's
it,
enough
it,
following
it is
and passion
because,
there, right?
yes. So now, again, the Calcutta, Bengal, it's because that's where, when the British had first come to
Yeah,
India.
that's where it
That's
started. That's one of the oldest like derbies in the world, I think, isn't
yes,
it? Is it like
yes.
East Bengal, and
It,
what's the other club? Is it?
Bagan.
Uh, yeah, Mohun Bagan. That's right. Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
So really strong there, and that's another thing I was going to ask too. Is I know that you kind of mentioned in different regions it's different, because from my understanding and kind of casual research over the years, it seems football seems very regionalized in India.
Yep.
Like you mentioned, you've got Bengal. I know the Northeast is, while population-wise is underrepresented, like as far as footballers and things, generally tends to produce good players. You look at like the Goa region and some of the Portuguese influence throughout history there, and so that's something I was interested about too, of looking at the past and what has created those cultural shifts. But it sounds like just in general there seems to be more following, not only from players at a grassroots, but speaking to like salaries increasing. There must be businesses and investors seeing there's some opportunity there. There's more eyeballs and attention going to the game.
Absolutely, that's for sure. And all of this added means that there's more participation now, and participation at grassroots level, because that's your base. The strength of your grassroots
Absolutely.
program determines how the nation is going to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. And so we kind of got a little background into your time as a player. When did you start to feel, all right, I'm ready to coach, or get the urges to coach, and what kind of led you to that decision?
So the first temptation I had for coaching was when I was a player at 14. This is when I played as a goalkeeper. For
Okay.
some reason, I don't know the reason, but despite training and where the focus is on you, I always had that one eye on, okay,
Hmm.
what's the coach doing, what are the sessions like, what are his team talks like. So I always had an interest which I discovered at the age of 14, but then I didn't go all out into it because I still had a playing career going at that point.
Sure.
uh, and then I just decided at I think was it at 20 or 21 that now playing can take a halt and it's going to be coaching completely. And I took the step of completely deciding to dedicate all my time to coaching. So a lot of
Hmm.
I've seen a lot of people in India, they have a playing career going on as well as a coaching career, but then I just believe that then you're neither here nor there. So then I
Hmm.
completely set aside any playing ambitions, and went into coaching and started off trying to do it the right way. So got my FA badges and then got my AIFF badges, and then just got a lot of experience. I'm fortunate to have worked at every segment of youth football in India, and yeah, the journey continues. I've been in the field for 6 years, but I still feel like it's been 6 months.
That's amazing. So yeah, you started with kind of like the English FA badges, you mean, and maybe doing some of the online
Yes.
learning. Thank you to
uh,
the English FA for all the resources that you offer to coaches around the world, and then up through like the AIFF, so the Indian badges and things. But I know you've got your UEFA B license. UEFA being the European governing body of football. So what led you to go through UEFA rather than putting more time and energy into like the Indian badges or like the Asian Football Federation?
Right. So I'm a big believer that there's so much information in football that even if you've spent 50 years, you've probably only understood 5% of the game.
Yes.
So the FA badges that I was talking about, so they were physical in-person courses held in India and in Dubai,
Okay.
with the tutors being flown over
Fantastic.
from England. I've done my level 1 and level 2 through the FA. I've done my Scottish FA level 1.1, 2, and 3, as well as the C license. I've done my FAW, the Welsh C license. So I've done it through all three associations as well as the Indian one. So your
Okay.
D license, your E license, your C license, and the AIFF ones. Now, I wouldn't want to compare and say that, okay, one is better than the other, but from a personal perspective, I just believe that the advancements in Europe, because Europe is where football is the home of football. So
Sure.
the information I got from tutors through the British pathways, the English or Welsh or Scottish FAs, I just believe that it opens your mind up to, you look at football in a much different way, and way
Absolutely.
that the way that they encourage you to put your own ideas, that has probably made me a much better coach, and that's why I'm a huge disciple of the European system.
I
And
see. And when you did the UEFA B, was that hosted in India too, or did you have to travel to one of the UEFA member nations to do that in person?
so I traveled to Wales. I
Okay.
traveled to Wales, and it was a 4-day in-person course and 12 days online on Zoom. So started at
Okay.
4:30 a.m. India time. But it was a good experience. I mean, I like the FAW because they seem to be able to cater to coaches who are overseas.
Okay. Interesting.
They have a system in place, and not just for international coaches, but also British coaches who are coaching abroad. Because of
Okay.
course, if you want to do a UEFA B through the English FA, you have to give 9 months and you have to stay there and that may not be possible for everyone. So here they
Precisely.
customize. That's
Yeah.
why I'm a big fan of
Okay.
the system.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, because that's something I've looked into myself. I mean, I've still got plenty to go on with the U.S. Soccer Federation coaching badges, but of course, similar to you, like wanting to learn from different cultures. Obviously, with UEFA being more of we look at a lot of the top coaches in the world coming from that region, and so that's something I've looked into too. I know Scotland offers some for international. I didn't realize that Wales kind of had some of those options because you're right, as a coach I think one of the obstacles, obviously, there's cost. At least in the U.S., each level as you go up there's more cost. There's more time investment, whether that is in person and having to travel to the location, which of course we understand. You have to make commitments to grow in your career, but I think sometimes it can be very challenging and almost prohibitive for coaches to be able to do that. So it's nice to hear that they're able to offer some options for international coaches or people who can't necessarily be commonly going to Swansea or Cardiff or wherever it is, but can still kind of benefit from the course. So that's fantastic.
100%.
Excellent. And so now you've shifted your perspective from playing to being a coach. And how did your view of the game in India change once you took on this new role?
So the biggest challenge is that you're not looking after yourself. You're looking after yourself plus 25 others plus other coaches who are attached with the team. That was me as being a coach. Now it's of course a bit more than that, because now it's about running a club. But at that point it was every day was a interesting challenge for me. So it's all about working with different age group players in a different way, communicating, so customizing your communication with each person.
Absolutely.
By first trying to understand the human and then the player. Now these were the very basic steps, and I always had so you have a grit, you have a certain element of hard work that you expect to put in as a player.
Yes.
I have always tried to maintain that in coaching. So every session that I deliver, I try and ensure that by my standards, it's world class. By my standards. So anything. So I can't say that I put more effort as a player than I did as a coach. It's literally the same thing, equal, regardless of whether I'm coaching a men's team, a women's team, or a U8 team. So that's what's been different for me.
Yeah, I love that perspective, regardless of who you have in front of you, giving that same effort, that same attention, because it really, really matters, and the players need that. But I love what you said, too, to be able to communicate with players first as the human and then as a player. It's something I agree with. You can have all the football knowledge in the world, and if you don't know how to communicate it properly to that individual and how they're going to receive things, and taking into account not only their emotional needs as well and their maturity, I think then you're really limited. I think the coach's role is very much with those relationships and building the social side. So what do you think was like a formative experience or moment earlier on in your coaching career that is still stuck with you to this day?
So it was the best experience I had was, when I had I think it was my second coaching role, where I was employed to work with children at the age of under U12 and U14. But what was different was that they were from lesser privileged economic backgrounds. So they didn't have, you had players who have seen poverty, you had players who weren't guaranteed 3 meals a day, you had players whose parents were violent, you had players whose parents were alcoholic. You had players from different backgrounds, and they were all U10, U12, U14. Now, the whole journey there, I don't know whether I'm capable of pulling something off again of similar kind, but that was a sport that had never played football before. They may have kicked a ball around a few times, but that group was fantastic. What was special to me was, yes, we won a lot of tournaments. We smash teams at youth level, but then that's not really very important. I mean, what was more important was that you had girls who believed that football was not meant to be played by them. You had them who have become passionate about it, and today they are well-known players in the Indian fraternity, playing professional level. There were boys who did not know the route of what's next, and I have one player from there who's playing professionally in the country, and then you've got a few who are playing at a decent local level. The entire journey of 5 a.m. training sessions, and every day trying to develop them on the field, off the field, giving them that exposure. That was the best, I would say, internship I had. I would call it an internship. That was the best internship I had, where it kind of prepared me to now deal with any kind of challenge that would exist in Indian youth football.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an amazing story, and obviously it was very influential for you, of course. And but what do you think? And again, this is always what I think about as a coach.
Yeah.
What do you think that being a part of that team, of growing, of learning, of being successful in the field, what do you think it did for those players personally, and how it impacted their mindset and kind of their path forward as people?
Right. So, football has numerous benefits on the pitch, but even more benefits off the pitch. Now, there are certain life skills you learn. For example, the most simple thing of getting to training at, for example, 8 a.m. Now, that
Yep.
immediately tells you about punctuality, being having to dress in a certain way, your kit, the way you greet people. Now, these are elements that would benefit you regardless of whether you become a footballer or whether you're doing something completely different. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where a simple thing. So, there was a lot of communication in English. Now they were more comfortable from the backgrounds they came from. It was more of in Hindi, in the Indian language.
Okay.
But then they picked up more of conversing in a second language. Their personality has developed. So I would say that this is one of the key reasons why I believe that regardless of whether you're a school, you're a charity or whichever organization you are, you should have a sports program, because the benefits that kids get, that's lifelong. I mean, no one's going to then
Absolutely.
forget how to dress well or how to greet people or how to be on time.
Yeah, totally agree. I think the way to kind of conduct yourself super important, because you have the goal of not only being successful as a player in a team, but just the participation. That's such a reward of being part of a team. But with that opportunity, there has to be accountability, there has to be standards and expectations. And so I think a lot of what you just said really feeds to that. And like you said, it's going to go beyond the field itself, beyond the pitch. It made me think too of of course, even in the United States, we work with players of different economic levels and personal backgrounds. But where I am, it's kind of the suburbs. So in many cases, players are relying on the parents to drive them to training, especially because in the United States being very spread out,
Yeah.
that's kind of just how it works in our little pocket of the world. So what would you say a typical day looks like for like the average Indian child as they go through their day?
So they go to school in the morning. They usually finish their school by 2:30 or 3:30 at max. And while they're at school, it's complete education. The Indian family systems are usually very, very academically oriented. So that's the priority
Mm-hmm.
for every kid. It's how many marks you score. Based on the marks you score, you're allowed to play a sport or you're not allowed to play a sport. That's still the mindset with a lot of parents. And after they come home, and then they usually go for another activity. Now there are many kids, I feel sorry for them. They, after their school, they come home, take a break for an hour or two, and then they go for another academic class, so tuitions. They go
Yep.
for more tuitions. And the ones who are lucky, they have their own activity, they have their own extracurricular co-curricular activity. That's how a day would look like, in short.
Okay. Okay. And then, so after your experiences early on coaching, what kind of led you to forming your own club now in the form of Pune Pioneers FC?
Right. All the years that I did coach, I just believed that, so every coach has an element of arrogance in them, however much we don't want to mention it, because
For sure.
we are strong on our beliefs. We believe that
Yep.
what we have to do is
Yeah.
what we do is what works. Now, that's something one can't do wherever, if you're working at another place. So now I wanted to put my ideas into action, and have nobody really, have no boundaries to be to be stuck under. So that's why I decided to start Pune Pioneers Football Club, with the idea that the curriculum we set is something that I believe in. Um, any kind of, so the values that we expect from players, the way we want to deal with parents, it's
Yes.
completely customized according to what I mean, it's not doesn't sound the best, but customized to the in a way that I believe is right. Now, whether that's right or wrong is something that you'd probably know a decade later once the players have
Yeah.
actually become full-grown adults. But for now, I would like to believe that we have had relative success. So we have three pillars that we work on, three aims. Number one is gender equality. So equal opportunities for regardless of which gender a human being is of. Number two, making sure that there's a pathway for young players. So we are completely, our men's squad is completely full of 16, 17, 18-year olds. And number three, it is to try and promote local talent as much as possible. Now, the state that we come, so Maharashtra, it's doing well in football, but nothing compared to the states you mentioned because
Hmm.
Maharashtra doesn't have a history for the sport. So now we try and promote as much, so our first option on getting players is players from the same city. And then we, for if it's a, if it's a tournament that requires a bit more of, better players, then our next option is cities, but around the state. So these are
Okay.
the three pillars that we work on, and we have had a lot of players who have trained at our club for a year or 2 years, and now they are attached with professional clubs. They are playing for their state team. They are playing for their district team. So that's nice. And yeah, we are constantly having bigger clubs taking players off us, which I'm very happy about because that
Right.
is that that is our aim. That's our objective. That's and
To
as
develop, right? Yeah.
yes, it is to develop
Developing
and
those players, giving them that further opportunity, and
yes,
not necessarily, yeah. So it looks like you guys see yourselves as very much developing, and
and
of
also
course wanting to have more success, but seeing that success as like by individuals, not necessarily on a team level.
from a marketing perspective, it's more of, I mean, you can do whatever branding you want, but the best way of branding is that these are our players and this is where our players have gone to. So
Yep,
then,
absolutely.
that's truly that's an authentic advertisement of how the academy is doing, how the club is doing.
For sure. Yep. Yeah. There's no way around that, right? It's very clear results. And what would you say is your role now as director of the club, getting the club started and leading it now? What are some of the biggest challenges that you face?
So the biggest challenge is cash. Money is the biggest
Yes,
challenge that
sir.
I
Yep.
I don't. So it sounds cool be heading a football club, being a club director, but actually, I mean, I think it was more enjoyable just being a coach because here bills is the biggest thing. Now,
Mhm.
we taken our approach is we don't really bank on sponsors. So we are not dependent on sponsorship money because what happens usually in India is that you get a sponsor for a year, the sponsor gives you a particular sum. The next year they don't renew, but then you have scaled your operations to a in a bigger way, and then what
Yep.
happens?
Now you have to cover exactly. It's not
Yeah, you
sustainable, right? It's
it's
not
not
really a
sustainable.
long-term plan.
Right. So what basically what comes in is what goes out. So we are not a zero profit. We earn from the club. That's the livelihood for me, for coaches, for many of our players who have become coaches. This is the livelihood. But there is the odd bill that comes up like a huge registration fee for a tournament, or let's say you want to go and play a game that's the size of the country. I mean, even if you have to go from one city to another in the state, that is still an expense.
Yes.
So that's one. The enjoyable part over here is, I mean, again, I treat this as well as an internship because I'm doing roles that I have never really done before. For example, looking after the sales and marketing for a club. For
Hmm.
example, procuring equipment for a club. For example, having the doing business development, like getting another venue and starting an academy, starting a center, a soccer school. That's a new thing for me. Um,
Okay.
Getting players from contacting other clubs to say that why don't you look at our players, do you want to take them into your club? So now there are so many new things that I'm doing over here which initially I completely I went crazy. So I didn't know
Yes.
which one to attack because you had 20 things. Now you don't know which one to attack, especially
Hmm.
when your league starts in a month. So I was
Yeah.
doing 50 things at one go, but now I'm fortunate because so I only do the strategy part now. So anything to do with business development all the footballing side of things is looked after by, so I've got someone called Achis Bhagwat. He looks after, he does my role now, but more
Okay.
football centric work. So
Right, more
now,
of a technical director of football type of role. Okay.
yes.
Gotcha. All right, awesome. And I'll say, first of all, I mean, I've checked out the website for the club and everything. It looks super professional. I feel like your mission is communicated really clearly. So I feel like you guys are on a good footing, at least what I've seen with that. As far as your facilities and some of those like material resources, do you own your own facilities? Is it more customary that you rent from maybe a private facility or from a school to use their pitches? What's kind of the norm within India, and how about the situation for the Pune Pioneers for your club?
So what we work in a unique way. We do not have our own facilities because we don't want to spend that kind of money until football becomes much bigger than what it is in the country. Otherwise, it becomes really risky. We go on a percentage, profit based percentage with every venue, because after all, remember that we don't have capital where we can afford to take losses for maybe a quarter or 2 quarters. So we go, at most places it's 50-50, where
Okay.
so now that venue is giving the facility for rent, so you can maybe take it for an hour, take it for 2 hours. What we do is we say give it to us for an hour or 2 hours in a day, and the number of admissions, whatever the fees are, you keep half, we keep half. That way, what they earn over a period of time in that hour is much more than they would giving it out on rent. And for us, we have that initial stage of having to put money into facilities, because facilities can be expensive. That is completely taken away from us. And yes, it may be once our center has got enough kids, which many of them do. You feel like, okay, it might be better to just pay off rent and earn the bigger profit. But we just believe that this gives us a long-term security and relationship with the venue. So right now we have, as we speak, we have 5 venues. We will have 7 or 8 venues in the city by next month, and we will have 1 venue outside the city. So that's in South India. Now, in terms of having your own facility, that is still something I want to do. But what I'm looking at is perhaps acquiring land in the middle of nowhere, so somewhere that's not accessible, and just enough land to then make a couple of 11-a-side pitches and
Sure.
a
And
gym
develop.
and a
Yep.
pool. Yes, so that's what I'm looking at. But I would not put money into this because I don't see the return.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, even here in the United States, that a lot of that overhead is just extremely high, and most clubs, even the biggest clubs, they're renting or have some kind of partnership with a local government authority, with the private facility, with schools to rent their fields, because between even just developing it, maintaining it consistently, it's just so challenging. But it's also something that you absolutely need, and you can't get away from. And I'm curious too, the quality of facilities, the type of facilities, so where your players are training, are these artificial turf pitches? Are there grass pitches? Is it mostly like a dirt or clay type of surface?
Right. So now we have got five after school evening academies, and we have got 2 schools. Now we are again very lucky that four out of 5 of our academies are AstroTurf 3G.
Okay.
The one of them is grass, but then when we say grass, I mean it's a bit uneven, so it's not real grass. Now our 11-a-side pitch is it's not even clay, it's not even mud, it's basically really uneven. It's stones, and it's not if you look at it, you won't call it a football ground. But then that's the only affordable 11-a-side pitch that we have found in the city.
Okay.
Don't really have
Gotcha.
much use.
Yeah, and like if I think of places, we're fortunate many places in the U.S. There's so many fields, whether it is schools, parks, because we have a lot of land, right? There's a lot of space. When you're talking about a massive city in India like Pune is, I'm thinking very densely populated. any extra space needs to be taken up for real life activities. So is there a shortage of like just facilities in general, or is it more of just a shortage of quality?
So I can talk about the city I'm in. It is a lack of space in general, because I mean, if there is, let's say there's a 100 by 60-meter area, people won't really think about making a football field. They would probably think about making apartments, because the profit is hundredfolds
Yes,
doing that. So
absolutely.
yeah, so you don't find space, to be honest, to play. If you find a 11-a-side pitch at an affordable rate, then it's a luxury. But in Pune, the only 11-a-side pitch is they charge a bomb, so you can't really super accessible. So that's
Okay.
a challenge. You have
Yeah.
to just work on 6-a-side, 7-a-side, 8-a-side pitches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then that kind of leads to my next question there. With those constraints from infrastructure, from essentially like culture, and to your point, even in the United States, in a major city, if there's a lot of land, the first thing they're thinking is not, oh, let's put a park here. It's to your point, it's that profit, because you need capital to invest. So capital wants capital back, and you don't get too much generally from youth sports in comparison with other projects. But as the lack of space and things and those restrictions, I'm curious, has that led to more of an opportunity for something like futsal, right? Or for smaller, like 4 or 5 aside, with maybe, because the space is smaller, just working with what you have? Or is more of the vision throughout at least Pune been to try to have full size, like regular 11v11 football?
So in Pune, I'm delighted with the small-sided game culture. Again, this is all because of the lack of availability of an 11-a-side
Right.
pitch. But you go on a Saturday, go on a Sunday, there are youth tournaments happening on these 6-a-side pitches all around the city. And some of the talent that you see there by Indian standards is fantastic. I mean, you've got players who are real grassroots. So they are what I call street footballers, who have never really been coached, but just by being in this 6-a-side environment, some of them are amazing. With regards to the actual futsal, um, there isn't really a futsal culture per se, because you don't have the facilities, you don't have that wooden whatever the
Yeah,
customization is
the
of that.
court, or even like maybe a concrete court.
Yes.
Essentially, we would call like a basketball court, right? Or maybe you could
I
say a
mean,
tennis court, something like
yes.
that.
So people do play a lot on basketball courts, but real futsal, that culture hasn't come in yet. The
Okay.
AIFF are running coach education courses, so you have your futsal level 1, level 2. You have those courses going on, but it's a far stretch from futsal actually happening in the country.
And when you talk about the 6-a-side, 7-a-sides, and the grassroots, it makes me think of one of probably my most recent football obsession, which has been which is part of what led me to connecting with you and wanting to learn more about India, is watching Instagram videos and pages of like the 7-a-side tournaments in places like Malappuram and Kerala, and it just looks like totally organic, raw, but also extremely competitive, extremely volatile. With the tournaments bringing players in from overseas to compete. Could you share a little bit of, like, because I've only been able to see, from, I think there is a FIFA documentary that I've been meaning to watch, but I've only seen just these posts on Instagram, whether it's the free kicks from distance, or the fights after the match, or fans storming the pitch, and they've got all these wooden bleachers like right on the pitch. So could you explain a little bit about that type of culture, and maybe if that's something that exists in Pune as well?
Absolutely. So firstly, I'm impressed with the research you have done, because I mean, usually it's unusual for a foreigner to know about Kerala. So it's called Kerala Sevens. Now it's really entertaining. So now, first, let me tell you about how it's organized. So it'll be someone's farmland, where they'll just they'll just make a space over there. It's going to be mud grounds. It's going to
Yep.
be a week before you'll have these bulldozers, or those machines coming and flattening the land, and they just use chalk, and they make the outside line. They put too
Yes.
many goalposts. Now where does it now that's how the organization, what the pitch looks like. Now let me tell you why it is as crazy as it is. It is a bragging right between local businessmen of that area,
Mm,
and there's a lot of gambling involved. So there's a lot of
yes, I
betting.
got that feeling.
Yes,
Yep,
yes.
got
So
that
there's a
feeling.
lot of betting, and people have bet huge amounts. I mean, basically amounts that you could perhaps buy a house at. So those are the kind of amounts people put in.
Yes.
Now, these are completely unofficial tournaments. It's not recognized by the National Federation.
Hmm.
But in their quest to win that, and even the prize money, so the prize money is huge, but the businessmen who own that team, they don't really keep the prize money. For them, it is more of getting that trophy. That trophy is their bragging right in the area
Right,
that
the
they are.
bragging rights,
Yes,
their reputation, their
yes,
standing. Yes.
yes. So they bring in players, and there are now I think it's reduced, but there were in the off season you had top Indian national team players who would just come, and at that time there wasn't too much recognition, so no one really caught them. Nobody knew that they are playing these tournaments. They
Mm,
would play for like huge amounts per match, and then they would and you had some real top players playing against, let's say, someone from Kerala's a village in Kerala. Now coming to
yeah.
the outskirts, to the overseas players, so there are a lot of now there are a lot of players from Africa in India who are looking for clubs, who don't have clubs right now. So now they would bring these players in to play these sevens. And now the overseas, the African players that you see playing in these sevens, many of them are players who have got transfer market profiles, who have played top
Wow.
divisions in different
Yeah.
countries. They are not unknown players, but it's just that because the leagues are so short. There are many months where those players still need to earn food, earn a living. So then this is
Yeah.
what they do. Now the prize money is crazy. So if you've won a man of the match, you'll get a television, you'll get a washing machine, you'll get a motorbike. So and now when it comes to the fans, there's already a crazy culture for football in Kerala. Now these matches happen at night, so if you watch the videos, you'd probably notice that they are
Yes.
mainly done
Yeah.
at night. So everyone will just finish their office. You'll have people bringing their alcohol in and just sitting there and making noise, and they wear their traditional attire, and it's a huge experience. And the following that those Kerala Sevens have, not even the ISL has.
And like that connection with the community, and like because it sounds like such a uniquely Carolyn thing. And again, for people who aren't super familiar, Kerala is a state of India, towards the south of India, and so it seems like that's something that has kind of been born and raised in Kerala, and that's fascinating. Thank you for that background, because most of the Instagram pages I've found are not in English, and I'm not able to read the various languages, and so I just try to pick things together and follow different accounts. But that's really amazing. So definitely something I'm fascinated about. And again, just those stories of football, it's unbelievable. So very excited that I got some more insight to that. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. So kind of going from that, which is like ultra grassroots and very, in some ways, at least to my knowledge, uniquely Indian in that sense. Where do you think is like the next steps for India as a country, as a whole, and some of the steps they can take to get more prominence, to really reflect more of the standing of the country on a global scale?
We are on the right path. The current head coach, he's doing a good job. He's a Croatian. He's doing a good job with the national team. Our ranking, I mean, see, we are. I think as of today, I think we are ranked number 100. But by Indian standards, that's still a huge achievement, because a few
Sure.
years ago we were closer to 200. So it's been a huge improvement, big improvement in the national team style of play. It's no longer just dependent on one player. It's the build up using every player on the pitch. That's much nicer. The women's game is also doing a bit better than before. Now, I would, of course, the leagues are doing very well, it's recognized. But what I believe is that we need to increase the number of players playing at grassroots. And also, we
Absolutely.
need to find a way where players start playing football a bit earlier. So now in the UK, you have players who kick the ball when they are 3 years old.
Hmm.
Whereas in India, many players don't know what football is until they are 8 or 9. So now, if we can get more U6s in to just play informally, the number of hours they are the number of touches they are getting on the ball, that's much more, so when they are actually ready for a academy setup, their basics are a bit better than what the usual competency is right now.
Right.
Number two, I hope that in India we see longer tournaments. So right now there are many leagues, the tournaments that have 6 games. Now 6 games in an entire year is not really good, especially when you have. I mean, it's never good to have 6 games in a year, and on top of that you have a squad of 20, 25, 30. So I hope
Yeah.
we have every district having leagues with a minimum of maybe 20 games a year for a start. That'll get us some improvement. And with regards to the facilities, there are better facilities coming. There's better players are being taken care of. But until we have a very, very strong grassroots program, like let's say Japan has, because Japan are idolized in the
Absolutely. Yep.
Asian football. So
Hmm. Hmm.
if we start having a culture that way, that's when Indian football will gradually then make it to the top 80, and then the top 50 hopefully soon.
Yeah, yeah. And one word that you picked up on, first of all, I agree with the grassroots approach. You have to improve the base and widen that base in order to be stronger and go higher at the top of that pyramid. And definitely what Japan has done is, a very much a great model to follow. I think the one word that you said that sticks out to me is like changing the culture, because if you want to get younger players involved, I feel like they're more likely to be involved if the parents have a background in the game and an understanding in the game. And without that, then you just need a lot of, I think, direction and investment from those federations, whether it's the national or the state level,
Yeah.
to be able to really push and have a concerted like marketing and advertising campaign. Because I see the similar things in the United States. Now I think there's more parents who have played the game, and so we're seeing they're getting their kids starting younger, so their kids are much, much better because they've had a ball at their feet since they were a year old, right? But it's like a culture, it's a family thing. Do you think that there's a way that can change in India, or do we just need to be patient and kind of wait, or is there any way we can accelerate that process?
As of now, I think with India being the size that it is, it's not for every little step that we want to take in football, it'll the number of people you have to influence is too huge. So I think it's a game of patience.
Mm-hmm.
As long as there are certain clubs, certain individuals, certain coaches, certain players pioneering different things. So doing things in a different way, and then making noise about it. Maybe that's
Yeah.
when 100 others would follow suit, and that's when we can probably see a revolution. Now, the first people who can make a change is schools, because every kid is gonna, I mean, in India you can't say every kid, but most kids have access to a school. And
Yep.
if we can get schools to incorporate a strong sports program and not have this idea that sports is more of a gift for if you study well, because I mean,
Mm.
you can have a great mind, but if you don't have a great body, then what's the point of having a great mind? So if they can set a sporting culture, that'll be a good start. Everything else will become much more easier then.
Because I'm curious too, with your club, how do new players hear about you, or how do they get into the pathway? In the United States, generally, if you have a club, we have like what we call our travel, where you're playing against other clubs. But most travel clubs have a intramural or recreational league.
Yeah.
So players are starting at 5, 6 years old. They graduate up at 8, 9, 10, 11, whenever they want to make that jump. And then, of course, to your point too, of having your better players leave, there's a whole ecosystem. There's a hierarchy. But how do you find most of your players at your club, or how do they hear about you?
Ours is primarily a pay-to-play model. Now, we do offer scholarships to supremely talented players who perhaps, don't have the luxury of affording our fees. But now, the easiest captive audience that we have are people who are within a 1 kilometer radius. because such is the parents' outlook to football that they don't want to go too far to drop their kid off. They don't want to, and when I say too far, I mean anything more than a 10-minute distance for them is far. So that's our immediate audience. Now we have some dedicated players at some of our centers where they come from an hour away, 45 minutes away. Big respect to them, but mainly how we get those players is they just walk around and then they just see someone, they see a bunch of kids playing, they see a coach, and then they come and inquire. Now the ones the others are through social media, through a lot of schools through the schools that we work with. It's through
Okay.
running trial ID camps, and there are a million other ways that we do it marketing wise. So our target is to have 100 players per center that we are running. So
Okay.
right now we are training around, I think it's 200 players, but we want to become much bigger than that.
Well, we wish you the best in that journey, and we'll be keeping an eye on your progress with the club. Everyone who's listening and watching will have more information about the club in the description, so you can see more about it and follow Ryan. This has been an amazing call. I'm very excited about it and appreciate your thoughtful answers and you giving your time, Ryan. It's been fantastic. As we end every podcast episode, I would love for you to be able to complete the sentence, because football.
I've been able to bring a purpose to my life because football.
Excellent. Beautiful. Beautiful. This is great. So thank you so much again, Ryan Roy Shah of the Pune Pioneers FC of Pune, India, for sitting down with us. And everyone, please keep an eye on the description to learn more about the club and everything happening there. But thank you so much. This was a great episode.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. All the best to Transform Soccer. You're doing some great stuff, and I enjoyed this interview because the research you have done of Indian football is second to none. It's been fantastic, and above all, I think it's early morning over there right now, so you've really got up from bed to do this podcast. I really appreciate it. It's been supremely enjoyable.
For sure, totally worth it. And I mean, compared to your players' dedication for 5 a.m. training sessions, this is nothing. And I love it, so it was great. But thank you so much. And we hope to have you on again in the future and check on your progress.